Hey guys, SGD here. So, you guys know that I haven't been playing Magic that long, digitally since around Shadows over Innistrad, and with Kaladesh I started playing in paper. But I do a hell of a lot of reading. The history of Magic is so fascinating. From how cards have changed visually, to how R&D designs cards, colour identity solidifying, such a fascinating history, and being about the age to have played Magic for the majority of its life with some idea of what I was doing, I lament not being able to, or even wanting to, prior. Modern is probably the sourest point with me, interestingly enough, as it's always said, 8th edition was when I was really starting to comprehend TCGs. Through my research, I came to what I considered to be the problems with Modern, learned of Extended, what became of it, and heard varying opinions on the recent Frontiers format. While I have nothing to do with any of them currently, and probably won't for a while as I don't own anything old enough, and it's still another 9 months before Shadows and Battle for Zendikar blocks rotate, that doesn't mean as an outsider I don't have an opinion on the Extended Modern Frontier conundrum. It's been something I've been thinking about with the reality that the Shadows deck I enjoy having a limited shelf life now. Extended, originally known as Type 1.x, was exactly what it said on the box, an extended form of Standard. What it actually contained varied over time, but by the end it was the most recent 4 blocks and their associated core sets. With today's 2 set blocks, this would translate into the last 4 years worth of product, starting from the Northern Hemisphere's Autumn set. This is what would be legal right now if Extended was a thing, M14 onwards. I love the idea of Extended. Gives a longer life past what Standard would normally give by about 2 years, so if you don't want to buy a new deck or dislike the current state of Standard, there is a format for you until the current deck you've got is completely gone, and by then Standard should have fixed up, or there is something new you want to play with. It's what, 3+ years? You should be fairly bored of the deck by then anyway, and have had ample chance to sell out before rotation if you so wish. There is also the upside of it not being eternal. Problem cards go away. They may take a while. For example, Collected Company and Siege Rhino, the commonly considered problems of Khan's block, won't be out till the Northern Autumn 2018 I believe, but they do eventually go. Sick of seeing them? They're not in Standard, play that. You have options. There might be a case where both Standard and Extended are horribly unpleasant, but that's an R&D issue more than anything. What is also a big boon for Extended is that you don't have to go that far back, only 4 years. I can still find Theros and Khans on the shelves, M15 too, they're not a problem to find. It's an accessible format. That said, there are 3 major strikes against Extended. 1, it's a retired format. We can all play it as much as we like. Stores can hold tournaments for it. They may even make it their FNM if they so wish. But Wizards isn't going to recognise it. Not unless they're forced to do so by overwhelming amounts of people talking about and playing it. 2, from a Wizards perspective, it possibly cuts into Standard. Extended makes it harder for them to shift dud or low-powered sets when a format exists where people aren't forced to pay attention to them yet. They can just choose to play Extended, not buy the new stuff, and Wizards as well as your local game store's bottom line suffers. It makes sense from that perspective why Modern was created to replace it, which we'll get into. Finally, it just becomes the stomping grounds of decks people were absolutely sick of from Standards gone by. This is partially why Extended died. Decks people were sick of already and didn't want to fight anymore. Modern replaced Extended back in 2011 in the Pro Tours, but replaced it fully in the August of 2013. Modern is pretty self-explanatory. It's the modern sets of Magic, being 8th edition and onwards. Though 8th edition isn't very modern now. Modern is an odd format for me. Every single issue goes back and forth with an adequate answer, and statements made about it meant to be positive come with a very relevant rebuttal. You can use your old cards forever, but it's a glorified legacy format, and those are hard for new decks to break into. 2003 was a long time ago now and it's expensive to buy into. But Modern Masters! Does it really help that much with expensive packs and limited print runs? It's been figured out. But new sets give new cards. Have they really done all that much outside of Eldrazi and a few cards in Aether Revolt? There is probably more, but you get my point. It's not for everyone. It doesn't even really replace Extended. Instead, just plopping a new legacy format where the reserve list cannot exist so that they can make sets like Modern Masters to profit off it. For Wizards, they know modern and legacy players aren't their main consumers. The best cards in those formats are old, so they made a format they knew would be harder and harder to get into over time, indirectly promoting Standard and giving them an avenue to make expensive products like Modern Masters. Don't lower the barrier too much, but profit off of it. It's already figured out like Legacy. It may not be the same problem as Extended, the stomping grounds of old decks everyone's sick of, but it's similar enough. The format only has a small amount of decks dominating due to nothing comparing to certain mechanics and interactions. People get bored of it, and it falls into the same territory for many. We're sick of fighting this small pool of decks. Where I think Modern really does shine is the casual and budget sectors. Get away from the meta decks, it can be easily done on a budget and you have an absolutely massive amount of cards to play with. Though the same can be said of Legacy, but Modern is more accessible in terms of supply and has more concise wording on cards. While Modern being a de facto Legacy format with expensive and powerful cards out of your price range may keep you from competitive Modern, it's still a really enjoyable, worthwhile and affordable format for casual games. Its competitive side is just an acquired taste for people with a big budget. Frontier is the new Eternal format created in Japan because lack of availability of Modern staples, or because stores want to shift stock amazing in Standard that was recently rotated but irrelevant in Modern and Legacy, depending on your point of view. Like how Modern starts with the new card template and concise wording of 8th edition, Frontier starts with the Altar template of M15 with the little silver oval on Mythic and Rares, as well as the availability of cards from M15 onwards becoming part of the reasoning for M15 onwards. While this is all well and good for Japan, it has raised some eyebrows from many with the massive push for the format in the West. Should it start with Origins and get rid of Khans? Why not Theros? Why not play Extended? Is the push in the West coming purely from stores trying to push rotated out stock useless in Modern and Legacy? I'm not really ready for an Extended or Legacy format just yet, but I understand all the suggestions. They're all valid and come from well thought out positions, mechanically or thematically, but honestly, I think M14 is also a choice that hasn't been commonly suggested. Frontier is just another Legacy format in the grand scheme of things, a more modern, as silly as that sounds. But 8th edition also coincided with the 10th anniversary of Magic itself. M14 coincides with the 20th. Just seems like a nice place to start from that alone. Thematic. As for the format itself, due to the starting point, for the West at least, it seems like a bunch of people got in around Khans and can't get over it's not only rotated, but it would be rotated at all. Hence why it's not a push for Extended to return, which would eventually rotate. Do people forget the complaining that was going on about Siege Rhino and Collected Company? I don't. I saw a lot of it when I was getting interested in MTG back during Shadows over Innistrad's previous season. Chances are they'll just be dominant until something bigger and better comes or integrates them, or a toxic combination happens. People are saying fetch lines are an issue due to too much consistency. Starting here with these problems doesn't exactly set the right image for Frontier, especially with a no ban list policy. It actually looks more like what people complaining Extended became, where the overpowered decks of Standard gone by that people were absolutely sick of duke it out. It'll grow out of it, but it will grow into most of the problems every Eternal format has. Boring format with fewer decks at the top with overpowered mechanics and interactions. Frontier is way too soon to implement, it's too small of a pool, just restarting the same problems of Extended, which will turn into the problems of Modern. Questionable in starting position, and being done by the wrong people for the wrong reasons. Even in Japan, it wasn't pushed by the players, but the stores, with not a care to what it actually is, how it wasn't a good thing in the past, and what it will eventually become. Though all of these issues exist for it, I don't think it's without worth though. Of all the Legacy formats, it's the one I'm the closest to, and it's the one most accessible to me. Probably a lot of people, especially those ones new to the game. It's the one most likely to be shaken up by something new. Being accessible and vulnerable to change are probably the biggest points in its favour. Also of note is Frontier being new doesn't mean it's cheap. It's already got price hikes and everyone knows what's good. If you want a budget format where you can play the best, well, you probably want Pauper. Prices for Frontier are already decently high and can only escalate higher, especially with no ban list, which will rear its head sooner or later when some absolutely toxic abomination rears its ugly head. After talking about the three formats, I suppose you're wondering which one I think is the best one. Well, I don't know. Theoretically, I like Extended a lot, but I understand what it becomes, which doesn't sound fun, and led to its demise. Plus, decks go away eventually anyway. It doesn't save them. It just extends their life. Practically, I think Frontier would suit me the most. While it has 3 sets I don't care about whatsoever because I have no vested interest in them, it does contain everything I do care about so far. I also understand what it will become, and that doesn't sound too palatable. Then we have Modern, which has an absolutely massive card pool to become immersed in, and the deck builder in me is salivating at the idea of it right now, as I haven't given it much thought before. But the price and it being figured out is an issue. It's only appealing to me in a casual sense. But frankly, does it really even matter? Your local game store is probably just going to put on the most relevant formats to your area. If they're good at what they're doing, and you can spread what you want around your group to see if they want it too, then put it to the owner. All of them can coexist. I know this is a cop-out, but I think all three suit different types of people for different reasons, and they have different sensibilities. Same goes for all formats. Some want issues to rack off. Some want to use their decks in a relevant format to them. Some want a huge pull. It's not really a matter of a be-all and end-all. It's just a matter of which one is most relevant to you, your playgroup, and which one gets biggest on a global stage. This has been Some Gamer Dude, and I'll see you guys next time.